And what I want to make sure we convey to you right up front is this is your meeting. This is a meeting where you have the opportunity to ask all the questions that you want answers to. It's very important that you do because this is a complex subject. They like to make it sound very, very easy, very simple, and look the other way. Don't worry, you have nothing to fear. Everything's going to be okay. What I hope to propose to you tonight is that you actually, as a community, have the opportunity to make some choices. You're the consumers. This is your drinking water system. And it's important that you start to understand that and take ownership in it and help your community elected officials make those decisions for you. In the past, they've just made them without your consent. And then you have the problems that we find ourselves in today. This is not unique to Bossier City, Louisiana. This is a problem around the country. We've all been reading in the newspaper for the last 2.5, 3 years now about Flint, Michigan. If I were to pick a location for a drinking water system's gone bad, it would not have been Flint, Michigan. There are thousands of other communities far worse than Flint, Michigan. Flint, Michigan is an example of everything you can do wrong as a regulator, but it is not the example for water quality. A little bit about me, a little bit about Aaron, a little bit about why we're here, and then we'll just break right into it. Over 2,500 community members here in Bossier City have emailed Aaron and said, "Help! Our water smells like chlorine. Burns my kids in the shower. It's causing my kids to have asthma attacks. Were you aware of the brain-eating amoeba?" Yes, yes, and yes. We actually started receiving complaints about seasonal or maintenance chlorine burns in Bossier City about 3 years ago. And with social media, she'd get 10, 15 emails. "Hey, I heard that you were in this town in Missouri. Could you look at our town?" And we'd look at the water quality report and we'd say, "Ugh, another chlorinated system. Probably doesn't do it right, doesn't know what's going on. Look at your water quality report, give them a few answers, and we'd move on." About 3 years ago, it went over 100. 2 years ago, a couple of hundred. This year, 2,500. So it was time that we get involved. We can't go everywhere. So I will tell you that Aaron and I, about 5 years ago, decided, where can we have the biggest impact? Where can we help consumers and community drinking water systems really make change and really make a difference? And so we literally are only able to pick one, maybe two systems a month per year. And imagine trying to manage 15 to 25 drinking water systems. And they go on for many years. So there are some systems we're still involved with 3, 4 years later. Your system is unique and different. And that's what I hope to convey to you tonight. Most of the communities I go into don't have the infrastructure or the capital investment to make significant change very fast. You do. You already have a state-of-the-art $81 million surface water drinking plant in this community. You already have it. Okay, so that's going to be the easy one to get past. You already have it. 99.9% of the communities Aaron and I work in do not have that luxury. So why does this one make such an important impact? Because it's about conveying the truth to your consumer and doing the right thing. So this is about providing you information. I'm only going to talk for about 30 minutes, and then I'd like to spend the other hour, or better part of one, spending the time asking or answering your questions. The most important part about what I'm going to talk to you about tonight is those choices that you have to make. And it's important to understand kind of what brought us here. In 1996, the Safe Drinking Water Act amendments were signed that had a component in them called disinfection byproducts and the disinfection byproduct rule. And it had a schedule. The Safe Drinking Water Act was actually signed by President Nixon in 1974, but it didn't take effect for 5 years. There's always a compliance schedule. So in 1979, that's when things really started to happen with drinking water regulations. They didn't touch the regulation again until 1996. So then from 96 to 2001, you had that compliance schedule. And what it said was the bigger cities with the higher populations had to comply first, and then the schedule tiered down to the smaller systems. And they had until, 2010, 2011, 2012, systems were still coming into compliance. And it began with compliance at the water treatment plant. The disinfection byproducts, the trihalomethanes, the halocidic acids that were forming with disinfection at the treatment plant were regulated when it left the treatment plant. So right at the border of the treatment plant, whatever the values were there, that's what you had to be regulated by. But science knows that when you chlorinate water with dirt in it, total organics, when you chlorinate that water, those byproducts don't form until they go down the street. They spend a few days getting down to the reservoir. The big reservoirs down here that have the elevated storage tanks, say Bossier City up on top, okay, they spend a day or two in there. Every day, they're reacting with that dirt in the water, the organics, and the levels of toxins are increasing. So they do a locational running annual average. So they pick locations around the city. They're supposed to go out to the farthest dead end of the distribution system, and those addresses are available online. I've plotted them on Google Earth. They are apparently compliant, but they're not exactly at the dead ends of the distribution system. And when you chlorinate or use free chlorine, like they're using now during the chlorine burn, those toxins go way above the regulatory standard. Okay? For trihalomethanes, it's 80 parts per billion. For halocidic acids, it's 60. Okay? You guys are right there when you're using chlorination. So when they go to free chlorine, they go right past it. When you smell chlorine, like I've smelt in your community on my visit here today, when you smell that chlorine, that's trihalomethanes. Chlorine, disinfectant, in clean drinking water doesn't smell. Okay, so it's that off-gassing. The drinking water regulation was written for drinking water, the act of consuming drinking water. So when toxicologists wrote the regulation, they were concerned about a 40-year-old male drinking 2 liters of water every day has 1 in 10,000 increase in bladder cancer. Doesn't cause me a terrific amount of concern. It's something that's bad, it's something that deserves regulation, but drinking 2 liters of water, the same tap water every day, over your lifetime, 1 in 10,000 increase in bladder cancer. It wasn't until the late 90s and the 2000s that they found out that you might drink 2 liters of water, but how much water did you shower in? How much water did you set your child in the bathtub in? It's a terrific amount. You can actually inhale more of these toxins in a 5-minute hot shower than you can drink in a month. So if you smell it in your house, if you open your dishwasher or you do laundry and you smell that chlorine smell in the room, that is an indoor air pollutant. That is what's causing the exposure. You'll actually absorb it through your skin and you'll inhale it in your lungs. After 1996, they started doing the toxicological effects. One of the 4 trihalomethanes that's regulated is chloroform. Chloroform is the old, when they used to do surgery in the 1800s and they'd knock you out with a rag full of chloroform. That's one of those chemicals. That's the one that actually has a higher odor threshold. They've found that in the first trimester of pregnancy, a significant increase in miscarriages, and in the second and third trimester of pregnancy, low birth weights. So they can actually take the average birth weight of babies in hospitals, and they run all these statistics. And those that the mothers were exposed during the second, third trimester had low birth weight, and first trimester had increased miscarriage rates. So those are the types of things. Hello? Those are the types of things that we're concerned with. So they're not going to go back and touch that regulation. So somebody said, oh, we're over-regulated anyway. These are just ridiculous additional regulations. This is something that we really shouldn't be bothered with. Well, that's what you as consumers have to ask yourselves. That's the choice you have to make as a community. It's one of the easiest things to comply with. And what makes it so unique and so special is if you remove the total organic carbon or the dirt out of the drinking water, you accidentally or incidentally also remove all the pesticides and herbicides and personal care products and pharmaceuticals, all the other organic material that's found in the raw water that is passing through your treatment plant now will also be removed. So you get that incidental impact. When we first started making these presentations, Aaron and I, we talked a little bit about the use of chloramine as a secondary disinfectant. Chloramine was basically used by drinking water systems that waited for compliance. They knew that the regulation, let me take you back to the regulation in 1996. It says if you have a surface water treatment plant, which is what Bossier City has, the best available technology for your community is to engage in enhanced coagulation. Coagulate up more of the dirt using new advanced chemicals, as opposed to the old we used to use aluminum sulfate, ferric chloride. There were some plastic polymers. There were different things that would cause dirt to clump and fall out of the drinking water or make it more filterable. Okay, that's the coagulation process. So they said if you got engaged in enhanced coagulation, you'll fall out more of the dirt. When it goes to get chlorinated, it won't have anything to react with, and you won't form as many disinfection byproducts. And it says, and then if enhanced coagulation, if enhanced coagulation does not work, then follow granular activated carbon. Okay? Hello. Okay. The granular activated carbon will then remove the remaining, smaller particles. They actually absorb into the media. That's what the regulation said in 1996. What many communities decided to do was rather than take the dirt out, they would spend all the money cleaning it up, and then they would add ammonia to the drinking water because the chlorine will then bind with the ammonia and won't bind with the dirt. And so if it doesn't bind with the dirt, it doesn't form the disinfectant byproducts. But what it does is it makes the disinfectant weaker. Chloramine is described as a weaker disinfectant. It's more persistent, meaning it will last longer in your distribution system, but it is weaker. So if their organics are in the drinking water, what happens is the chlorine is trying to kill the bacteria that might be associated with them. So if you add ammonia to the chlorine, what happens is the chloramine's going through your pipes and it's trying to kill bacteria. So it's falling off and it's leaving the ammonia behind. And that's called free ammonia, okay? The ammonia that they feed in drinking water is nitrogen. That is the same stuff you put on your lawn for fertilizer. It is like candy to bacteria. And that process is called nitrification, where the chlorine is trying to kill the biofilm in the pipes. And then once the chlorine is broken off from the ammonia, then the bacteria thrive. And that's called biofouling. And so when we were getting the complaints in years past, it was associated with nitrification and biofouling. And so it was a maintenance procedure. They used to tell you, we're going to switch to free chlorine and we're going to flush out the system. Okay, that's what they were doing before. Because the state of Louisiana has had such a problem with the braiding amoebas, it has basically gone to this reactionary procedure of a chlorine burn, whether it's required or not. So for 60 days, 2/3, 66% of a pregnancy trimester, your drinking water system is suffering from a chlorine burn. It also has been associated with rash, upper respiratory issues, eyes. I mean, you can just go on and on and on the immediate health concerns. The use of chloramine is somebody asked earlier about Flint, Michigan. Because it's more persistent but less reactive, what's happening is everybody thinks, oh, I don't have a lead service line to my house like they do in Flint, so I'm okay. But all your brass fittings, your water meter out in your front yard, okay, brass has to be made with lead. They do make lead-free meters now, but that regulation is only a couple of years old. Your water meter is more than a couple of years old. So what happens, and the reason they require the first flush, is because they want to get that water that's been sitting in the water meter all night long. And that's the water that has a tendency to get more of a lead leaching into the water. So it's whoever gets up and makes the coffee in the morning is getting the highest dose of lead. Okay, so that's attributed to the use of chloramination. There are a number of other problems associated with it. Who's changed the flapper valve on their toilet tank, the little thing that's on the chain that comes up? Okay, we used to change those for years and never have a problem with it. When they switched to chloramine, if you touch it, it'll take you a couple days to wash that black crud off because it literally breaks down the rubber gaskets. There are rubber gaskets in your dishwasher, there are rubber gaskets in your laundry machine, there's rubber gaskets in your refrigerator now, there's rubber gaskets in those washerless faucets, those little black O-rings, destroyed by chloramine. Free chlorine does not. So where I'm going with all of this is, my recommendation is that you use your surface water treatment plant appropriately, the one you built in 2014, to its fullest and maximum use, and that you go back to free chlorine all the time. There's no reason to keep going from chloramine to free chlorine, chloramine to free chlorine. What they're in fact doing is they're burning out all of that biofilm. It is snot, it is sludge, it is nasty, disgusting biofilm that's being fed by the ammonia, and that's where the amoeba like to live. Okay? The amoeba, it's not like they just found one little guy out in the pipe. For that one little guy to be out in the pipe, there had to be trillions of his friends hanging out nearby. Okay, that's just how bacteria are. You know, they're in groups, they're in colonies. If the brain-eating amoeba were living in the distribution system, hundreds of different kinds of bacteria also were living in that distribution system. And so the corrective measure is turn the ammonia off and turn the chlorine up. Okay, there's a lot of controversy in town about whether or not somebody saw or used a chlorine test kit appropriately. The point Aaron was trying to make is a swimming pool chlorine test kit stops at 4.0. Some stop at 3, but let's just say it stops at 4. Okay? People from this community started sending her dipsticks at 10. Okay? At some locations in this distribution system, when that chlorine burn started, you probably were at 10 in some parts. I was telling someone earlier tonight, it depends on where you're at in the distribution system and what type of material is used to get the water to your home. If you're in an older part of town on cast iron or steel mains, you're likely to have a certain colony or family or group of bacteria living in your pipes. If you live on a newer subdivision that has the big blue plastic pipe, you're going to have a different type of bacteria. If I start chlorine out at the treatment plant at exactly the same level, let's for argument's sake say 4 milligrams per liter, and 50,000 gallons goes in that direction and 50,000 gallons goes in that direction. This one's cast iron pipe, this one's plastic pipe. They both reach the end over here at the same time. This water might have 3 milligrams per liter of chlorine left in it. This water might have 0.5. And it's just the type of bacteria in that part of the distribution system and how it reacts and interacts. Online, I didn't bring copies for everybody, but on the Bossier City Water Department webpage, you can find this document. And this discusses the age and chronology of your water treatment systems. Describes it very well. I am not here to say that Bossier City has bad equipment. Quite the contrary. You have one of the best water treatment plants in the United States of America. It is robust. It has repeat overlapping technologies that should provide you the best water quality in the state of Louisiana, if not most of the United States. I don't know why they're not using it the proper way. I will tell you that the treatment plant, I gotta hold this back here. You started out at 6 million gallons in 1958. They updated it in 1972 to 16 million gallons, and in 1996 you went to 25 million gallons using what is called conventional water treatment. In 2013, you added an entire new treatment train of advanced ultrafiltration membranes and granular activated carbon with ozonation. I mean, you got the best bells and whistles in the country. I was describing to someone earlier tonight, it's like you have a garage at home, and on this side of the garage, you have a 1960 Volkswagen, and on this side of the garage, you have a 2018 Maserati. But you're afraid to drive the Maserati, so you put the car cover over it and never take it out of the garage, and you guys are running on your 1960s Volkswagen. I'm not sure what the percentages are, or what the use of the new treatment plant is, but what I can tell you with many years experience in water treatment, and what I'm seeing water chemically and water chemistry wise in your distribution system indicates to me they're not using the new treatment plant. Certainly not to its most effective capacity. So what they're doing is, I looked at your long-term use of water. Your highest peak day demand is not 25 million gallons a day. So you have redundant capacity on top of redundant capacity. Most systems have like 50% redundant capacity. So, the most you should have is maybe a 30 MGD treatment plant, but you guys have 50, and you never exceed 25. So that's great. But I would be using the Maserati every day, and I'd leave the Volkswagen for backup. Okay? And that's just what's not happening here. The other thing we find very confusing, and I don't know how to say this any other way than to just say it, is 2014 you fire up the new treatment plant. 2016 you contracted out operations of your water and wastewater systems in Bossier City. The engineering firm that had historically and for a long period of time worked for the city as their consulting engineer formed an operations company and took over operations and maintenance of your water system. And in local newspaper articles 45 days ago, they bragged about the fact that they've saved you $6 million in 2 years. Now I read that and I go, what were we doing wrong? Or what were we doing right? That's not a win-win statement. When you're facing a bacteriological outbreak in your distribution system that caused amoeba to thrive, and forcing you on a 60-plus day chlorine burn. Now you're going to hear, our water is perfectly safe. It meets or exceeds all federal and state Safe Drinking Water Act requirements. I've seen it in press releases. If you want regulatory compliant water, great. If you want safe water, it's time for a real discussion. Because you're not getting safe water. Regulatory compliant tells me absolutely nothing. We've talked about Flint, Michigan. We've talked about maximum contaminant levels. They're going to tell you about the maximum contaminant level. We have never exceeded the maximum contaminant level for trihalomethane. Bocock's nuts. He's just down here stirring up trouble. Well, they only have to test every 90 days. The question for your elected officials is, did you test during the chlorine burn for trihalomethane? You guys all know the answer. No. Didn't have to. And God forbid that we did test for it during it, because we'd exceed the 80. Clearly. I can look at your past water chemistry when you used to exceed it, and know that at low chlorine levels you were exceeding it significantly. So at high chlorine levels, you're probably going to exceed it even more. They are not testing during the chlorine burn, so they're right, I'm wrong. Your water's not safe, but it meets the regulatory compliance requirement because they don't have to test until this chlorine burn's over. Everybody's heard about Flint, Michigan. What's the maximum contaminant level for lead in drinking water? Lead, causes problems with children, neurological issues. We've taken it out of almost everything. It's of a real concern. There's no dispute that it can cause cancer and it causes developmental issues for children. What's the maximum contaminant level for lead in drinking water? There isn't one. There isn't one. So your water can meet and exceed all federal and state safe drinking water act requirements for lead because it has an action level. And what the action level is it's one of those things where they're supposed to go out and they're supposed to pick homes where lead is most likely to occur. Okay? They're supposed to go to the old parts of town and they're supposed to say, I think that they used to use lead services there. Or this part of town's older and the water age is high, so the corrosive index is going to go up. That's where they're supposed to test for lead. Most cities, I'm not calling Bossier out, send home bottles with their employees that all live in the new subdivision down on this part of town. It's just, that's the way it's done. So you don't get the representative lead samples. Let's say they fail. You're still regulatory compliant because all you're required to do is take action. Yeah, all our lead samples, were above 15. Some were 500. We told the people that they had high lead levels in their houses because we thanked them for the samples and gave them a piece of paper that said, hey, be careful. What do you have to do? You have to, we put in caustic soda and increased the pH, or we added some polyphosphate, or we did this, or we did that. That's all you have to do, and you can maintain your perfectly federally compliant drinking water. Another form of bacteria that actually resulted in all the federal indictments and state indictments in Michigan. Do you know 11 regulators in the state of Michigan were indicted for manslaughter? 11. The head of the State Department, the equivalent of the head of your health and hospitals here in the state of Louisiana, in Michigan, is on trial for manslaughter right now. There was a debate this week on whether or not he gets a bench trial or a jury trial for manslaughter as the head regulator for the state of Michigan. Do you think it's about lead? He killed 12 people with Legionella bacteria. Okay, you get that in your shower too. Or you get it when you're doing, laundry or you're washing dishes because it's airborne. New York State, highest Legionella deaths in New York City this year. They're going upwards of around 140 in New York City for Legionella deaths, all drinking water related. What's the maximum contaminant level for Legionella in drinking water in the United States and in Bossier City? I'll tell you, Legionella is regulated. We regulate 96 chemical contaminants in drinking water, 96. Lead's not on the list. Legionella is. And I'll give you the answer. It's 0. How many drinking water systems in North America tested for Legionella last year? Unless a hospital has declared, 14 people came into our hospital last week and died. We did biopsies on their lung tissue and found Legionella. Go to this block of apartment buildings and run some tests. That's the only time it's tested for. I will tell you, Bossier City has not tested for Legionella. If the brain-eating amoeba were hanging out in that biofilm, I guarantee Legionella were hanging out there too. They like that party. They like biofilm, and they like the ammonia that you're feeding them. But you, as consumers, do not have to take it. You can literally start going informed to your city council. You can write emails, you can write letters. I intend to write a report to the mayor outlining what I've found. And I found some very interesting things. But I think the most important thing that you need to understand is you actually do have the power. Like I said, we've picked communities around the country where we think we can have the biggest impact. where I hope that what Bossier City does impacts 50, 100, 150 other communities. Somebody asked me earlier today, what do I compare Bossier City most like that I've worked in? I worked in Martin County, Kentucky. It's a little tiny town in the Appalachians. You throw a rock across the river, you're in West Virginia. They're poor. They don't have $81 million treatment plants. I think the whole town might be worth $81 million. They're struggling. They don't have the resources you have. So somebody said, well, what do you compare Bossier City to? Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Not the same, but similar. And why do I compare you to Fort Lauderdale, Florida? Fort Lauderdale, Florida doesn't have an $81 million surface water treatment plant for drinking water. But they transfer $25 million a year from the water fund that you all pay your water bills to the general fund so they can paint the sidewalks pink. It is the yacht capital of the world. It is full of very, very rich people. So they were basically using the Volkswagen still, in much worse condition than your Volkswagen in Fort Lauderdale. But they had the money to buy the Maserati and chose to transfer those funds. Now, what makes it different? City manager in Fort Lauderdale isn't at his desk anymore. He got fired over this. Okay, I'm working with the mayor in Fort Lauderdale now, and we're going to make the treatment plant improvements that need to be made. I could put you somewhere between Fort Lauderdale and Hannibal, Missouri. Aaron and I chose Hannibal, Missouri, because Mark Twain used to say, whiskey's for drinking, water's for fighting over. We went into that community, sat at a coffee shop with, 5 moms that were concerned about what was going on in that community. Those 5 moms formed a group. They started going to city council meetings. 3 of them are on city council now. The utility director has been asked to retire, he's gone. And they're getting the treatment plant that they need. They had to go to bonds. I have committed, you asked me about how do I keep adding systems? I'm still working with them in Washington, D.C. on grant funding for their treatment plant. So everybody's different. You have the opportunity to demand corrective action so that you don't have to have a chlorine burn again. There's no reason why you have to have a chlorine burn again, ever. You can go out to those tanks around your distribution system. If you're starting to have problems with, high temperature and waning chlorine residuals and water age, then you can have chlorine booster stations to where you feed 2 milligrams per liter of free chlorine in clean water at your treatment plant. It gets down here to that elevated tank down here on the highway, and you put a chlorine booster in. So it leaves the plant up there at 1.5, it gets down here at 0.9, you add 0.6, it's back up to 1.5, no harm, no foul. You will never smell chlorine again, your eyes won't burn, you won't be experiencing the trihalomethanes. I mean, it just goes on and on and on, what you could be doing to help your community. So usually I have a whole slide presentation. I'm not going to go back over it because I prepared one for this presentation for this community tonight. But it's going to have, what I'll do is I'll put it up online with you so you can go in and get it. Because what it has is it has the medical studies that I was talking about. You can actually go in and look at them. They're peer-reviewed medical studies. Bocock's not a toxicologist. He's full of crap. He doesn't know what he's talking about. Go read those 20 studies I'll show you because they're real. And they're based on, the inhalation, and then they would do a blood test. They're real scientific studies, peer-reviewed by other doctors. It's funny because if you take your consumer confidence report, that's completely wrong. I've read all your consumer confidence reports that are available online, and not one of them has the data put in there properly. But when you pull it out and you look at it, it says, if you have any further questions, consult your medical doctor. You've seen that in the consumer confidence reports? It says them. Or when they put up the public notice that they were doing a chlorine burn. If you're on kidney dialysis or you have a compromised immune system or any additional questions, see your personal physician. Okay? I love taking my water quality report in and asking my doctor to tell me what it says, because I have yet. Aaron still has a national standing request. Any medical doctor in the United States of America that can read to her a consumer competence report for drinking water, she wants to meet him because he does not exist. So it's a real fact. So all the studies are in there. I'll post it. Earlier on, I posted kind of the some preliminary stuff, but we'll get you more details. It's important that you have all the information so that you can combat this. Some of you are probably not from Bossier City. You heard that we were going to be here. We'll answer your questions too, so feel free to ask them. But like I said, I'm watching the clock. This is your meeting. I want to make sure we get all your questions answered because it's very important. And I don't have all the history. I was sitting at lunch today with someone and they said, they were telling me about the burn pits at the base. We were actually involved in that like 6 years ago. So, I mean, I'm not sure where we've been or where we're going. I do want to put out there, because I saw a lot of this on the Facebook, we get this question a lot. Somebody might ask it, but I'm going to go ahead and put it out there right now. Erin does not charge for any of these appearances. She never has. She never will. We are not here to sue anyone. We have never sued community drinking water systems in our lives. We want every penny that the community drinking water system has. That's your money. Why don't you sue yourself? Put that money back into the water rate. Put that money back into treatment technologies. So I defy you to find a drinking water system in this country we've ever sued. That's just an ugly rumor. I defy you to find somebody that's paid us. That's an ugly rumor. Erin and I was telling her, we're officially coming out and saying, we're with the Erin Brockovich Foundation. It's a foundation. We have 5 board of directors, no staff, ridiculously underfunded. I'm on my own nickel this week. We've both been very successful. That's just what we do. This is not killing me to come out here and help. Keeps us relevant, keeps us involved in policy and working with community water systems. Of the community water systems that I've been involved in, by the end of them, I'm friends with, if you go on like my Facebook, I'm friends with the mayor of Flint. He's not in office anymore. But I end up becoming friends with these people and making the change that's appropriate. But I get called everything ahead of time. We're not here to do anything. There's not anything in this for us. We're literally here for you, period. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and open up for questions. I'll walk as far as this thing will go. I have to hold it a certain way because every time I move it, it shuts off. So I'll repeat your question so that everybody knows what we're talking about. This is your meeting. No, come on. Yes, ma'am.
Where online will we find this data you're going to put?
Oh, okay. The information on this presentation, and then I'll put in some more links. What do you, Bossier City residents demand clean water. Oh, you're not going to make it. Yes, ma'am.
Is there a way we can test our own water? Like, I live in older Bossier, so I have the old pipes.
Okay. I saw something interesting today. And it was a lady that lived in, what was that community? Golden Meadows. So I saw a lady that lived in Golden Meadows who actually posted online. I don't want to out her, but I can't because I don't remember her name. She actually from Golden Meadows. She called US EPA Region 4. That's your Region 4? I think you're Region 4 here in Georgia. So she called them, and the local office came out and actually tested her water. Okay. I was surprised. That's kind of unusual, but I think it happens when they start seeing that we're involved and then they get a little freaked out. I did this over in North Texas, which is the suburbs of Dallas, and they actually went out and did testing, and you can't make this stuff up. So they were actually exceeding and violating like crazy, and the night Erin and I spoke, about 4:30 before going on at 6:30, TCEQ issued a citation for a violation, literally 2 hours before we went on, because they went out and did their own testing. So we got blamed for that. I don't need testing to tell me the trihalomethanes are off the charts. Are you smelling chlorine in your homes?
Yes.
That's trihalomethane. Yes, ma'am.
Is there any help using the filter, like in your refrigerator, your freezer, that's gonna make the ice and the water that you get out of, does that help the filter?
Yes. Okay, does the refrigerator filter or the filters under the sink help? Yes. I'm gonna answer this question and then come back to this one. I didn't finish up. It's too expensive. Everybody asks Aaron and I, hey, are you gonna come into town and do a whole lot of testing? Trihalomethane testing, one sample is like $600. It is very expensive to test, okay? And they have very short hold times because they're volatile, meaning that they off gas. So there's a special way you have to take them, there's a special way you have to handle them. We've taken them, you know, you should see my FedEx bill because you can't take them on airplanes anymore. So we've done it, but it's very, very difficult and it's very, very expensive. We prefer the utility do a lot of that testing. Refrigerator filters. Refrigerator filters are predominantly commercial coconut carbon, okay? Granular activated carbon, there are over 600, this is one thing that kills me because if I were to go into your regulator's office and talk to them about granular activated carbon, they'd go, oh, well, we know all about GAC. Really? There's 600 different types available in the commercial market, okay? And no two are alike, and no two will do the exact same thing. We have to understand your water quality in order to carbon. But trihalomethanes will be absorbed onto commercial coconut carbon, which is what is found in most Brita filters, which is found in the refrigerator filters, and they do work. They take out the trihalomethane. Carbon filters will take it out in the shower heads, but because you run so much higher volume through those, they waste out really, really quickly. You know, you're going to be changing those in order to make them effective every other day.
That was my next question.
Yeah, I will tell you that I would change the filters on the Brita and the tap. Brita's once a month, refrigerators once a quarter, the end of the sink ones, you know, once a quarter, on average. On average. Here's something that your community drinking water system's not going to tell you that they owe you, so I'm going to tell you. When a chlorine burn occurs, are they out flushing fire hydrants? They tell you that. They are? Okay, they are. Okay, yeah. The way a chlorine burn and a chlorine flush is supposed to work is you're supposed to go out to the ends of the distribution system and pull the chlorine in. And you'll see them blowing it out of fire hydrant. They're supposed to dechlorinate, but most of them don't do that either. Especially when they have these really, really high levels, because if they get into like a pond or a lagoon or an estuary or something like that, they'll kill plants and the frogs and all that kind of stuff too. You'll have fish kills. That's usually a really, really big problem. What they're not going to tell you is after they do all that flushing, go to your water heater, put the hose on that little hose bib, be very careful because it'll break. Okay, they put the cheapest hose bib flush outs on those things they possibly can, but you can do it. Get a hose on your hot water heater and flush your hot water heater. There are 50 YouTube videos out there that will tell you how to flush your hot water heater, but please flush your hot water heater. Because what happens is all that biofilm, remember how I described it as sludge and snot and metal fragments, and I found baseballs in water mains. I mean, you're going to find all kinds of stuff in those water mains. And what happens is as they're flushing, if there's somebody doing laundry, or somebody turns on a faucet, or somebody's doing something in the house, and they put on the hot water side, you just filled your hot water heater with all that slime and snot. Okay, and it will sit in there. And so that's why your hot water heater will start to fill up with sediment. Okay, routinely flush it, but always flush it right after a chlorine burn. Always. And change your filters. On average, the trihalomethanes coming into your home, okay, those filters will not remove chloramine. Coconut carbon does not remove chloramine. Coconut carbon removes free chlorine, but it does not remove chloramine, okay? And what it also doesn't do is when you go through a chlorine burn, and you guys average right around 50 on your trihalomethanes, okay? So chlorine is producing, you know, in the 130s to 180s. MCL's 80. When they're chloraminating, it drops to 50. Now, here's the problem with chloramination. The trihalomethanes and the haloacidic acids will stick to the coconut carbon. Chloramine makes its own disinfection byproducts. Okay? They estimate there are thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of these disinfection byproducts. So they regulate 9. One of the regulations they started about 25 years ago that's actually going to come to fruition, and that's going to change a lot of stuff, so you guys will actually just be ahead of the game, is they're going to regulate the disinfection byproducts associated with chloramination. And those are predominantly what they call nitrosamine compounds. Nitrogen, ammonia, nitrosamine. NDMA is the one that you'll hear about, and it stands for, N-nitrodimethylamine. That is going to be regulated. It was studied under UCMR, Unregulated Contaminant Water Rule number 3, which was done 6 years ago. By the time the toxicologists are done with it, by 2024, we'll have a regulation on it. Toxicologists have said that the disinfection byproducts associated with chloramination are 10,000 times more toxic than chlorine. NDMA, chloramine, and its related disinfection byproducts, because they're bound with the ammonia molecule, do not adsorb to carbon. So for, 10 months out of the year, you're getting chloraminated disinfection byproducts, and 2 months out of the year, you're getting chlorinated disinfection byproducts. Change your filter once a quarter. But know that a refrigerator filter and a filter under your sink and your Brita filter isn't touching the chloramine or the related disinfection byproducts associated with ammonia. Yes, sir.
Is all of this in a result of being a contractor, and is it all profit generated now? And have you seen the actual contract with the contractor or the consultant with the city of Bossier? I'm sure if we all called the city of Bossier, they'd say, well, we're out of the water business.
The license is still in the city's name, and the contractor is still a contractor to them. I have not seen the full-blown contract. I don't have a healthy relationship with the city staff right now. I'd like to. It's not negative, it's not positive, they're just not returning my phone calls. So you think about
the contractor.
The contractor. What I find interesting, and I got to be very, very careful because I do not intend to say anything disparaging, and I do not intend to give you any opinion on information I do not have. I'm only relating what I read in the public record. Okay? They were an engineering consulting firm, predominantly in Louisiana, that did engineering consulting. We don't have staff at the city of Bossier to design a reservoir. We don't have staff to design a pump station. We don't have staff to design a treatment plant. So they would hire these outside consultants to come in and do the engineering work. And they would manage the project. That engineering firm got very friendly with Bossier City and convinced them to contract with them as the operator of the water and wastewater system. And I believe the stormwater system. I could be mistaken there, but I know water and wastewater for sure. And they had to go out and tool up for it, because that's not what they did. So there are probably a dozen privatization contract water and wastewater operators in the United States that operate multi-states. This engineering firm, this is their first rodeo. Somebody's going to say it better than I.
Who are they?
Manchac.
Consulting.
Oh, somebody knew who it was right away. It's Manchac. If I'm saying it right.
Just spell it.
M-A-N.
CHD, yeah, it looks like an Indian word. I don't know where it comes from.
M-A-N-C-H-A-C.
Yeah. And they're they're probably highly qualified engineers. I would say that they're not operators. As somebody that's been doing this for as long as I have, I've worked with municipal government, I've worked with private water utilities, I've worked with contract operators around the country. To save on a system of this magnitude $6 million in 2 years is of great concern.
What did they do with the system? $6
Pardon?
million. What did they do with the system?
Okay, what the public record said they did with the $6 million is the city council's holding it in reserves so they don't have to increase your rates. I'm telling you what the article said.
Let me ask you this question.
still going on.
It's still going on.
Yes.
If we, can drink the water, bathe in the water, cook with the water, or what? Or we cannot, still cannot use the water?
That's why I'm having this meeting, because I want you to have the right information. You can drink it if you can get past the smell. Okay? That's number one. I mean, I will tell you that it exceeds the maximum contaminant level for the drinking water use. Okay? But because that toxicology study is based on bladder cancer and consumption, I would tell you I wouldn't drink it. But legally you can. Okay? What scares me more than anything about cooking is, I just did this the other night, put on a big pot for some spaghetti, and you know what? This is what kills me. Right after they go to a chlorine burn and there's a bacteriological outbreak and they say, you're on a boil water notice. The last thing you want to do in your homes is boil water with volatiles in it. Because all you're doing is boiling the volatiles right into your indoor air. Okay? I did, some of the areas where we make our money, I worked for a community that had built homes on top of it, and we went after the home builder and ultimately Shell Oil because they were both in collusion on a particular project. And what they did was they actually had 3 old oil tanks, and it was where they used to store all their sludge. And so at the refinery, they would kick all their sludge out to these oil tanks in the Los Angeles area. It was a Los Angeles suburb. And they would send their sludge out there, and then they said, gosh, you know what? That land's worth a lot of money here in LA County. We could put up $1 million homes. So they tore it down. They put up 280 homes on a 40-acre site in a nice part of LA. And the purchase and sale agreement for the land said, you've got to clean it up. Well, they didn't clean it up. They just basically bulldozed in the sides. They built homes on it, and about 5 years later, the oil started leaking up, everywhere there was a crack. I mean, it was under every foundation where there was a pipe or any place like that where it was breached, oil started coming out. So we went after the home builder and Shell, and prevailed. That's clean work. What was funny was the consulting engineer working for Shell Oil said, yes, there's benzene in the indoor air of these homes. A known carcinogen. It's gasoline. It smelled like gasoline because it was tank bottoms. Yes, there's toluene. Yes, there's xylene. Yes, there's TCE. Yes, there's PCE. All this stuff's in indoor air. But the chloroform is off the charts. Likely source, community drinking water. So Shell Oil, actually, consulting engineers listed, and it is now considered, it's like, I saw it on commercials even here, get your home tested for radon, okay? Get your home tested for THMs, and especially if they tell you to boil it out. Yes, ma'am. Oh, that's right.
So, we know that, what you were saying earlier, that like when you take a shower, you breathe it in. So what is we all have to take a shower and take a bath. So is it safer to shower or to bathe? And like if you bathe, do you let the water run and then let it sit for a while?
Yes. Okay. Back to the bathing, because he said, drink, cook, bathe. Bathe. So you followed up with the bathing question. If you're pregnant, don't. Don't shower. Do not shower in that water, okay? And avoid, husbands, if your wife's pregnant during a chlorine burn, you're doing the dishes. Do not use a dishwasher where you open it and you get that, everybody says it gets their hair nice and they get a facial. Don't. Okay?
So bathe and then shower?
Bathe in warm water first and let it cool off. Okay? Here's the bad thing. Okay? What's going to happen is a lot of that's going to come off indoor air. So if you can, and I know it's rough this time of year, have a window open. Or put your vent on, the vent in the shower. So yeah, get it out of the house. Otherwise, you're just sending that stuff throughout the house. Okay?
So it's better to bathe?
It's better to bathe. Basically, you want to get as much of the stuff to volatilize off and go outside. Go out a window or go out your vent, and then go in it. You're still going to dermally absorb it. So make it quick. Okay, and it's so uncomfortable to even have this conversation, but that's the facts. It's what I told my daughter. Okay, so you have to have these conversations with them. I will tell you that the asthma-related illnesses and the upper respiratory and the skin, the rashes and stuff like that, are more associated with the other 10 months out of the year, the chloramine side of things. So, and people will see the change. People will literally tell me, oh, my rashes went away, but my upper respiratory problem, I had more asthma during the chlorine burn, and I had more rashes during the chloramine. I mean, people will literally be able to tell when they go through the burn period. There are some cities that go 89 days. They literally turn it off on June 30, because that's the end of the compliance. It usually hits right after the 4th of July, and they go all the way to September. Aaron and I and toxicologists actually refer to what we call the September baby, because that's 90 days after a chlorine burn. So there's actually a term called the September baby, because it has a low birth weight.
Why is, the city trying to keep everything hush-hush from?
Why is the city trying to keep everything hush-hush? It's not unique to Bossier City, okay? I started out in this industry, I was reading water meters on roller skates in 1979, okay? And it's in the culture. I always joke with my colleagues, half my colleagues are kind of like mad at me, and half my colleagues still give me a big old hug and love me, but I will tell you that I'm committing blasphemy. But my colleagues, every water utility manager in this country, has tattooed on the inside of their forearm, our water meets or exceeds all federal and state safe drinking water act requirements. I mean, it's cultural. And so every water and wastewater, and now stormwater is the new thing that's going to hit cities. If you think you don't have money for water and wastewater, wait till the MS4, the stormwater permitting programs, start hitting you. They're going to be pretty expensive and pretty devastating. As a water manager in the 80s, a public works director, I had water and wastewater and stormwater all under my purview. I'll tell you some of the practices I did, because I'm not working for those agencies anymore. I used to pre-buy water rights so that the city manager wouldn't steal my funds, to balance the budget for the firemen's unmet retirement obligations, or for the potholes that the mayor, or for the new swimming pool, or for the baseball diamonds, or the new soccer fields. So I, as a public employee, would literally pre-buy water to hide the money from my city manager. Okay? And so you as a city, you're unique. Once again, you're unique. Your water bills aren't outrageous. You're kind of in the middle around the country. They're a little on the high side, but not outrageous. I mean, there's some that are real high, and there's some that are, I don't know how they're staying alive because they're really low. I don't know where all the money came from the capital to build, because you guys built a $60 million wastewater treatment plant at the same time you built the $80 million surface water treatment plant. You built both about the same time. So I don't know whether there was some capital influx because of all these shiny new casinos around here, or something happened. You guys got the money and you built it. Consider yourselves fortunate and lucky. I don't think that they're trying to keep it from you. I just think it's their nature. And then the consulting engineering firms that work around the country, they all went to these city managers and said, look, I know you don't have the money. You can't afford it. You can't raise rates because of the elections coming up. Nobody wants to raise water rates when the elections are coming up. And so we figured out this trick. If you add ammonia to the drinking water, it will mask, conceal, cover up. The chemical term is sequester the chemical reactions. It'll form a whole bunch of more toxic chemicals, but we don't want to talk about those. But these regulated ones, it won't form those that much. It'll get you down below the limit, and everything will be okay, and you'll be in regulatory compliance, and let's just be quiet for the next 25 years. And that's what a lot of them did. Okay, Shreveport's on chloramine. I'll get to you in a second. Shreveport's on chloramine. I came over here, and I felt like I was back in my college days playing water polo, because it smelled like the swimming pool of the city. I mean, it's you can smell it over here. I mean, I know what I'm looking for, but it's strong. Shreveport, it smells like somebody just did their business in it. That is some of the worst water I have ever smelled. and you're talking to somebody that is in this business that goes around the country. I will tell you, oh, the TV cameras are gone, but I see that guy. But anyway, Shreveport, that was bad last night. That was just downright ugly. Okay, so you have these two dynamics going on. They don't have the money over there to fix the problem. But you got a 50 million gallon a day capacity over here. Maybe you guys make enough water, you can sell them some. I don't know. There's got to be some sort of a fix here. But to have literally a river separating two socioeconomic classes the way that it does, and if you look at how the two systems were built up, both of them are going to tell you our water meets or exceeds all federal and state safety and economic requirements. And they're not lying. They're just not telling you the truth. And they're not telling you regulatory compliant and safe do not mean the same thing. I mean, and that's what's sad. What's sad is my colleagues know that these studies are out there. Okay? And it's not, people are like, oh damn, here they come again. They're going to put more regulations on me. We don't want new regulation. Let's go back to 1996 and just do what was on the books in 96. That's all we're asking for. And your treatment plant will far exceed that. This is the hardest city I've ever had to explain this in. You already have the capability of exceeding 1990. You could exceed 2018 and are choosing not to. And I can't figure out why. Yes, sir.
Yeah, it seemed like what I understood, if you take the dirt out of our water, we can have clean water. So what's the hold up that we can't have safe water tomorrow? What's it gonna take to have that safe water tomorrow? Will our system do that we have?
Absolutely.
Is it expensive?
No. Here's the other thing.
So why,
No.
why
Okay.
are we doing that?
Water rates and everything like that.
They're lazy.
It's a combination.
Lazy is the way I look at it. I mean, if you have a scope of what your job duties are, if you can get by not doing all your duties, I still get the paycheck, but I didn't do all the work I was supposed to.
Yeah.
That's the other thing. We're paying our water bills to City of Bossier,
Right.
but they're not managing it. So
Well, they're overseeing the contract.
So basically, we're paying
Yeah.
a contractor
Right.
through the City of Bossier.
Right. How I would change that is A, I would either take it back over, or B, I would put in a water quality criteria into the contract. The water quality shall be this or you don't get paid.
But can't we start having clean water tomorrow?
Yes.
They would.
That is a phone call.
That we have?
And you know what? I actually thought, and I've seen it before, I would have thought, knowing that I was coming to town, that they would have switched over just to make the smell go away. But I don't think they have. And the reason I know that they haven't is because I read the water quality report, okay, from the EPA that tested out later in Golden Meadows. Thank you. And what I found in that was I could still see chemistry going on that causes me concern. And nobody else would see this chemistry. So if you read the lady's report, it's online. She put it on some webpage or
It's
something.
on the Golden Meadows.
Golden Meadows.
Page, but you have to be able to join it, they have to.
Okay. I'll represent to you what it said, and then you can call me out on it if I'm wrong, but I saw it. So what it said was the EPA came out. They didn't come out and run any tests. They came out with a little bit more sophisticated device than a paper strip test. Okay, it was actually a Hawk colorimetric measuring device. Little box about this big, probably cost them about $60, and you put the water sample in it, and you drop the thing, and it gives you a digital readout instead of so it's a little bit fancier. And what she did was she ran both free chlorine and total chlorine. And the lady was actually, I'd like to meet her because she gave a very good description of the difference between the two. But what it told somebody like me was free chlorine, that's the stuff they're putting in without the ammonia, was 1.9. I'm good with that. But total was 2.5. What is the 0.6 reacting with? Or something else. Yeah, there's something chemically going on that's continuing to reform to make the total chlorine. If it had been 0.1 or 0.2 differential, I would have overlooked it, especially with the piece of equipment she was using. But because she reported it out 0.6, I'm concerned with the chemistry. What it told me was two things. Number one is it's still having issues. And number two, they didn't try to trick me and switch to the new treatment plant in the interim. I think two things would have occurred. If they'd switched, then they'd have known I called them out. Because I'm gonna eventually get the records. I can get the records, I just can't get the records during the chlorine burn because they only turn them over to the state, after compliance periods and stuff like that. So I'll get the records. And if they had done that switch, it would have made them look really, really bad. So
really the chlorine burn was not necessary, is that what you're saying?
not only not necessary, but for 60 days is downright out ridiculous.
They're still doing it.
Yeah, no, yeah, I mean,
It's still going
It
on.
wasn't necessary with the system we have, that's not necessary.
If,
So it's necessary, but because of what was in the water, it would not have been necessary had they been properly doing what they needed to do and using everything we have.
yes. However, okay, the more regulated, because amoeba's not regulated, okay? Except for in Louisiana. But the regulated bacteria, remember the trihalmethanes, they only test for 9 out of several thousand? The same thing is with bacteria. When they go out and they do bacteria testing, they test for coliform, not chloroform, coliform bacteria, okay? There's coliform all over my hands. It's all over the tables, it's on your hands. It's a very prevalent bacteria. When they test around town, they take chlorine residual and they take coliform testing. And it's a presence or absence test. The bottle either turns purple or it does not turn purple. If it turns purple, it means that there's coliform in the water. If there's coliform in the water, that indicates that bacteria can be present. They test for coliform because it's cheap, easy, and quick. That's what we like, cheap, easy, and quick. But if you test for it, then you have to respond. And so you go out to that house that tested positive for coliform, you're still not in violation of anything, and you have to test one house up and one house downstream of that point, and you test for E. coli. Okay, E. coli will make you really sick and it will kill some people. Okay? And so they test for E. coli in those 3 samples. That's the follow-up procedure if they get a positive presence or absence for coli. They never test for amoeba, they never test for Legionella, they never test for anything like that. They just test for the E. coli because that's the big ugly. If I get a positive on E. coli, now I go into a violation and a response. Now the state gets notified immediately and the state makes the decision. Do I do a boil water notice? Google boil water notices. They happen all over this country, 50, 60 a day. Boil water notices. And it's E. coli stopped in 13 water supply. Or there's been a water main break and the pressure's dropped. Or turbidity. Thank you. You in the water treatment business?
I took on one sport water department.
Oh, there you go. So she knows what she's talking about. So you know the whole procedure that I'm describing. So this is the procedure that they go through. Amoeba is only tested for in Louisiana. It's the only place that they test for it. If somebody dies, they'll test for it in Texas. But otherwise, they only test for it here. Where I'm going with this is the E. coli, if they say boil water notice, and then they're going to say do a free chlorine burn. You have to open up all your fire hydrants in that neighborhood, blow free chlorine through that pipe, and you have to, for 72 hours, test at 0.8. Louisiana has the new rule because of the amoeba. It's 0.2 for chlorine and 0.5 for chloramine.
I cannot confirm.
Oh yeah, they just changed you
My
guys.
issues started in the 90s.
Okay, so basically what you have to have is you have to have a chlorine residual at all those fire hydrants in that neighborhood. If you can't get it done in 72 hours, you got a real problem. Ladies and gentlemen, you're in a 60-day chlorine burn, and it's bad. Why? There is no scientific reasoning whatsoever, other than that the pipes are so biofouled and the nitrification is so bad that they needed to prescribe a 60-day burn. I don't know why. It's horrific what they're doing to you.
I have a couple of questions.
Okay, and then after her. I saw you.
Sir,
Yes.
question while we're here when you get to it.
Okay, thank you. Oh, there you are. Okay. Yes, ma'am.
We moved from Arizona to Louisiana back in 2012, and we've heard different stories, so maybe you can clear this up. Is our water coming from the river or wells?
River.
And how many, Bossier City itself, you have a South Bossier and a North Bossier, but Bossier City as a whole is growing by leaps and bounds more and more. Are they not wanting to update this system until they get more people living in the city?
No, they've actually
We have this.
pre-done it, yeah, you're
We
pre.
have this, but I mean the whole cleanup thing.
Yeah, no, you're ready to go. That's what I'm saying, you could do it now. You actually, that's why I'm saying, I don't, and there's answers to my statements. I don't know where the $140 million came from for a wastewater treatment plant, for a surface water treatment plant.
Where are those treatment plants located?
The wastewater treatment plant, you guys can probably tell me, it's a little further south over here,
South Bossier off the Parkway.
off the
Oh,
Parkway.
okay, now, that's okay.
And then the treatment plant I was at this afternoon is off of something Hamilton
Hamilton Road.
Road.
Okay.
And it comes in. Now, Bossier City wholesales to a number of suburbs out on the fringe. And some of those suburbs use groundwater, and they bring it into a tank, and then they take Bossier surface water and they mix in that tank. And when you mix surface water and chlorinated groundwater, you get a mess. But some of the suburbs around here do that.
Would that be, would that be what they always talk about with Sligo Road, because they're on a different water system than us?
Yes, that's the South
I
Bossier
got you.
water system.
Yeah.
It's a different system.
Yes, ma'am.
I have a couple questions and then clarification. The shower filters, if we have a chlorine filter, those are okay to change quarterly, that's enough?
If you have for free chlorine, okay, free chlorine, the trielementics and the free chlorine will blast, if it's carbon, it'll blast out right away. What you'll see people using for chloramine is it's a disc, it's a giant vitamin C tablet. And ascorbic acid will break the chlorine ammonia bond, and so you don't get chloramine. You get ammonia and chlorine. So they break it so that it doesn't cause the skin irritation. That's what you'll see in a shower head filter. The ones that are actually coconut carbon, if the water is the condition it is right now, 2 or 3 days.
And then, you change the filters at the end of the 60 days when they do a burn? And, okay, so.
And once a quarter after that.
And once a quarter, okay. And then the next question is, when they started the burn, I could smell the chlorine. I live not far from, Golden Meadows and Plantation Trace, so it's in that same area. I could smell the chlorine. I saw them come out the next week and saw them do the fire
Flush.
hydrants. Now, the water smells kind of fishy. It's not, it's a different smell than I've ever smelled before. And I will say that it has, in the past, way before any of this happened, usually on Friday or Saturday, and I assumed it was something that was being treated that would make its way down to our park because it was always on a Friday or Saturday. The water had a almost smoky smell, and I have actually smelled that smell in the air outside sometimes. I don't know what it is, but it would happen periodically and always on a Friday or Saturday. Does that mean anything, or can you shed any light on that?
I'm going to be hypothetical, okay, because I don't know the conditions, and you've asked a pretty broad question. Her question was, what changes water quality that she has a different odor smell on Fridays and Saturdays even before the chlorine burn? That's one question. And then the other question is after they did the flushing, she's starting to get a fish smelling odor. Okay, here's what concerns me about the fish smelling odor first. That happened after the flushing. They do an engineered practice called unidirectional flushing. And so they'll physically go down the street in a neighborhood and they'll turn off that valve and they'll turn off that valve so they get the highest velocity between here and that fire hydrant they want to blow all the snot out of. Sometimes they get a little hasty and they don't reopen valves. And when they don't reopen valves, crap will fill the pipe back up because you're not getting circulation. When I hear a post-flushing taste and odor concern, somebody closed a valve they didn't open. So I would call them back out and say, after the chlorine burn, I started to notice a different odor. Can you check and make sure that all the valves were opened back up?
Okay, thank you.
That can happen with that situation. Then just a second. I want to answer her other question, which was the smells. I'll share with you Omaha, Nebraska story, real briefly. In Omaha, Nebraska, I worked for a tortilla manufacturer. And tortillas would get mixed, and they would squirt little drops, and then they would go on this hot drum. And by the time they flipped over, the tortilla was cooked. And so it would go like this. And on Thursdays and Fridays, the tortillas would stick. And they couldn't figure out why we could run the factory Sunday through Thursday, but on Fridays and Saturdays, the tortillas stuck to the drum roll. And what was happening was a hydraulic shift in the distribution system. And what that means is somebody in your town could have a high demand on those days and cause the hydraulics in the system to shift, and you get an older water or a newer water that's still going through the volatilization in the tanks sooner on those days. There could be somebody running a factory that on Thursdays and Fridays they do the clean in place, and they shut down the floors and they clean everything up, and they're using a whole bunch of water. So the water moves over here in the distribution system. And somebody hits a fire hydrant when they're out, driving, and there's a car accident, and the fire hydrant gets knocked off, causes the water to rush over here. And so what happens is you have these dynamic shifts in your distribution systems. Ones that are seasonally remind me of the tortilla factory in Omaha. And all it was what was happening was a factory further downstream was using more water, and the water quality would shift from the groundwater part of the system to the surface water part of the system, and the groundwater would make the tortillas stick. It's that simple, and it happens. That's the easiest way to explain it. Another thing operators do, if you get picked to work on Super Bowl Sunday, all of us operators would sit around and we'd take bets on the Super Bowl flush. And what the Super Bowl flush was, how much the tanks would dip at halftime. Because everybody would go up and use the bathrooms at halftime. And you can actually see, and you'd go and you'd sign on the chart, back when we had charts before computers, and you put your initials where you thought that the Super Bowl flush was going to go. So that's how your systems can be dynamic and shift. I have one here, and then one there, and then I'll be back to you and you. Where'd you go? Somebody over here asked a question. Oh, here he is.
I have a rain-soft water system on my entire house. When this started, within a day or so after this water problem started, we had a water main break in our neighborhood, which put us under a boil advisory at the same time. And I called my filter company, and they advised me to bypass it, to shut it down, and said after this burn and the water gets fixed, that they would come out and purify, decontaminate my filter system. So I'm running without any filter at all right now. Would it behoove me to turn that filter system back on and then let them decontaminate it anyway after this is all over?
You're not on the boil water notice anymore?
No.
I might switch it back on.
They burn?
Yeah, I'd switch it back on, only because of where you're at. High levels of chlorine, which they were finding in certain parts of town, will destroy the resin beads. And so all resin beads are is they're basically a petroleum product sprayed on to a little styrofoam bead. And what they're designed for is you load it with salt, and the salt sticks, and then the calcium carbonate comes in the water, and it pulls the calcium carbonate out, puts it on the resin, and then the salt goes into the water. It's ion exchange. And chlorine can destroy those little beads.
So what they've determined is the fact that it is contaminated now, but I've got it bypassed. So what would it hurt to go ahead and turn it back on and let it start filtering something?
Their concern might be what my concern was, which is why I said to flush your hot water heaters, is it could have filled up with sludge and sediment. And that might be why they told you to bypass it. So you could have one of either of those two problems.
But if I turn it back on, I still get some filtering.
Okay, yeah. Let me think about it, and I'll see you in a minute. Because you got one of two problems, and they're both different, really different. Yes, sir, right there in the leather jacket first.
Yes, sir, how you doing?
Good.
I live down in the Golden Water, Metal Water Supply, and, I got, first of all, I wanted to wire y'all down here, and you clarified that. Thank you for not going at it from a litigation type thing, because the last thing we want to do is where if a lawsuit is done, it comes out of the taxpayers' money.
Absolutely.
Basically. So I wanna thank you for that. Number two, yeah, I've smelt the high chlorine level, and I'm under, with what I do, I would estimate there's probably about 1,500 miles of water lines in this city. I might be low, might be high, I don't know. But with the high chlorine smell we're smelling down there, I've often wondered, what is it at the plant? If I'm smelling this here and it's gotta go through everything, what is it down there? So that's.
You're right on. It's, in order for it to get to where you're smelling it at the bottom of the system and you got the oldest water in the system, the people next to the plant,
Yeah,
it's awful. It's god awful.
we're at the tail end.
Yeah, yeah. What's
It enlightened me, I didn't know about I knew about the new sewer treatment plant.
Yeah.
And I was like, people were complaining to me, it's expensive. Well, the other one was 40 years old. They need it up there, and it's expensive, especially all the regulations that they put
Yeah.
in nowadays.
I know this is counterintuitive, but I need you to follow me with what I've been telling you guys tonight. Even at the end of the system, it's gonna smell more like a swimming pool because it's been reacting with the dirt longer. So, and what you're smelling is the trihalometane, not, you're smelling chlorine, it's the chemical reactions with the chlorine. So, okay, I gotta come over here.
So, what is the source of the amoeba? How does it get into the system?
How does the amoeba get into the system? A number of ways, okay? It's in the river. It's naturally occurring in pretty much everywhere else south of the 40. Isn't the 40 run through here somewhere?
Okay,
20.
Interstate.
Okay, so 40, even further north up there. 40 south, pretty much across the United States. We just had a death in California, in Mammoth Lakes, which is Sierra Nevadas, last week. So it's associated with warmer waters, okay? And it's just a little critter that likes to live in the water. Now, how does it get in? It goes through the treatment plant, or it's finding its way in through other means, okay? And what's happening is it's thriving in the biofilm, okay? It likes to hang out in the biofilm, and you guys are getting biofilm because of your use of chloramine. So I want you to get off of that too, and then stop the dirt from coming in. What it does is, I mean, because you guys have a robust disinfection process. You guys are using ozone and then pre-chlorination, post-chlorination, and then chloramination. You're bombarding this water. The little critter should live, but he's making it through somehow, okay? I saw some things today from public right-of-way, in case there's any police officers here, from public right-of-way. I saw hatches to some of your drinking water reservoirs underwater, meaning stormwater had reached the level of the hatch that you open to go into the drinking water reservoir. So that's how amoeba get into drinking water systems too. So I'm not sure how it happened, but it did. And it's not like one little guy got in and he just found his way into that sample tap. There are trillions, and they're living in the biofilm. And until you fix the entire distribution system and the treatment plant, it's going to happen again. You know, it's the same thing as pulling one of those slot machines at one of the casinos up here.
So the fix is clean the water better, keep the dirt out.
Keep the
and
dirt
use
out.
chlorine.
Yep,
And
that's it.
everything we have and all the other things, that should
Yep.
clear it
The
up.
reason the state's making you go to free chlorine burn is because free chlorine kills stuff. Chloramine is fat and happy. I might kill something, I might not. I'm gonna last for a long time because I'm holding on to my ammonia brother, and the chlorine's on that guy going, I wanna kill something, I wanna kill something, I wanna kill something. And so he goes down a pipe and he goes, oh, there's biofilm in there, and he jumps off. And then the free ammonia goes, I'm free. And the bacteria go, candy. And they eat that, and the biofilm grows. That's what's happening in your distribution system. So you're basically underutilizing millions of dollars of equipment. You're cleaning it, you're bombarding it, and then you're peeing in it. That's what the ammonia is. It's the equivalent of peeing in clean water. Yes, sir?
Whole house water filtration systems. Appropriate when on the market right now, they can do anything for what they're doing with this water. And B, is it effective to even do that? Is it going to kill that water filtration system
If you have a hole, first of all, much like the earlier thing, if I get up here and tell you you should get this kind of home water system, then it's like I'm here selling something. So we don't do that. I can tell you that the home water treatment systems I've recommended to friends and family depend on where you're at. I will tell you that there isn't a commercially available water treatment system that would get you through this mess. It would have probably just trashed it and destroyed it. Okay, because when they do this with the chlorine burn, that high level of chlorine is just overloading the carbon part of it. Other parts of it will survive. You know, some people have ion exchange resin followed by carbon followed by RO on the drinking water tap. Everybody has different ways of doing it. One I would design for LA, one I would design for Louisiana, one I would design for North Carolina would be completely different. So that's kind of where we're at. I will tell you, all of them would be destroyed by what's happening here now.
Bath balls, like the dechlorinating bath ball.
Right.
Does that do any good for what is in there right now? And can you take one of those and put it in the back of a toilet tank? The worst smells that we're getting
In the toilet?
are in the toilet room. I mean, as far as it's just constantly, I mean, we're basically choking sometimes when we're in the toilet room.
That's because of that little nozzle on the top of the toilet that sprays that's volatilizing it. Yeah, that's where you'll notice the
So
balls.
the dechlorinating balls that go in there,
No.
you're just basically taking a.
Yeah, no, they're not. In a bathtub, they'll work. They'll take free chlorine out, but all of the off-gassing VOCs, they're already, once the chemical reaction happens, chlorine, dirt, that's a new chemical. It's no longer chlorine. So those are off-gassing in the house. What free chlorine remains in the bathtub, you throw the bath ball in, you're getting rid of that chlorine, but it isn't hurting anybody. It's actually killing bacteria and not smelling. It's the dirt and the chlorine mix that you're smelling. Yes, sir.
Bob, first of all, thanks for coming tonight. You were very informative, and I've got about as much experience as you do in water management. And I work with plants all over the U.S. My specialty is advanced oxidation chemistries. And I wanted to tell everybody that, I mean, everything that you're saying is spot on. The concerns about the high chlorine levels and the chlorine burn, I completely agree. I wouldn't do the chlorine burn myself. There's a myriad of other technologies that are available to deal with amoeba that don't involve these chlorine burns. But, you know, as we're going through this, everybody's listening. There's a couple of things that I want to mention. One is, a lot of the water plants that are built in the United States across the board have been built with the anticipation that the population will grow in those cities. And so they build them large. And then other things have happened, like water conservation measures. And the water conservation measures have driven down the amount of water that's used in those plants. So the plants are all over-designed, all of them. The difficulty is that they're designed to pump to do 50 million gallons a day. And they're only doing 25 million gallons a day. And the problem is the operators don't really know how to operate the plants that have capacity. So you run into a lot of problems with that. But what they do know is that they have to meet regulatory requirements, okay? And that's what they shoot for. And so when you, as you said earlier, it's written on their arm, you know, that's exactly right. I mean, they have to meet regulatory requirements. Safe Water Drinking Act, you know, there's now new regulations, New York Law 77 on Legionella, ASHRAE 188, the same thing. All these new regulations are coming out regarding biologies of water, which is, actually, I'm a biologist, so. A matter of fact, Brian Salvador is, with LSUS is here. He and I both worked together on the Camp Minden project. So, but.
He was supposed to be at a conference.
Made it back.
But what I'm saying though is that we deal with these water issues all the time. There are other ways to do that. But the point that I want to make is, and I want to kind of, you know, everybody's got questions about what you do with your water. Do I need a whole house filter, point of use filtration, all these other things? Those are all fine. The city and the water treatment plant are probably doing what they're supposed to do by law. All right, they're meeting the requirements. If they don't meet the requirements, they have to go to a lot more testing. And they haven't had to do a lot more testing, according to what I've heard from you tonight.
Right.
So they're meeting the requirements by law. Now the question that we have is that good enough for us in Bossier City? Is the law, is the regulation what we're okay with? So now, having said that, the last thing that I want to make a comment on is that as long as we're meeting the regulation, we're okay by law. But how do we change the regulation so that it meets what we want in Bossier City? And that's the question that I have for you.
You're not gonna change, okay? If you know what, I'm meeting with Peter Gravatt Monday in DC, okay? That's number one in EPA. I go kick his pants about once every 6 weeks. No one's going to change federal drinking water regulation. The only thing I've heard out there positive that I thought this administration might do is they were gonna combine the Safe Drinking Water Act and the Clean Water Act. Because talk about insanity. There are laws in this country that you can drink what's illegal to flush in a toilet. Because the Clean Water Act and the Safe Drinking Water Act do not mesh, okay? It's just insane. There are chemicals out there that you cannot get a discharge permit for that can exist in drinking water and no one cares. It's insane. How we've done it in other communities is you show up at your city council meetings. You start calling them out. You start saying, you know, what are we gonna do here? I'll share with you the Hannibal story, because and I showed Hannibal a little bit earlier, but I'll show you what we did there to outsmart the regulation. In law, and I know there was a lawyer here because I talked to him earlier, we have this issue called preemption. And preemption says that if a federal agency says something is okay to use in drinking water, chloramine, we can't change, you can't outlaw it. So if the federal government says you can use chloramine as a disinfectant in drinking water, and I'm ambivalent on which disinfectant we use, they all have their place. If you know what you're doing with your water chemistry, they all work. But we couldn't go and change the law. These three ladies that got on city council were saying, we just want to ban the use of chloramine in our drinking water. Well, because of preemption, you can't ban chloramine. You couldn't pass a city law. But ammonia is not approved for drinking water. So we actually, the regulation in Hannibal, Missouri says that you can't use ammonia in drinking water. So it means you can't make chloramine. So the end justified the means. And so you can do those types of things. Quite frankly, I think the community and the consumers and your press, armed with the information that you have what I would consider one of the best surface water treatment plants in the country, idling. It's probably running a little bit, but idling for all intents and purposes, and you could fire it up and use it better and tune it up. You know, my inside guys will tell you that the granular activated carbon that they brag about in that brochure that I showed you earlier hasn't been changed since the first fill at the commissioning of the plant. It has not been changed. Okay? I will tell you that after I announced I was coming to town, they placed an order to change the carbon. Okay? So, and that's you know, operators are telling me that. Okay, I'll come over to you in just a second. Back to cost and carbon, and I don't want to make it sound like I'm doing a carbon pitch. When I got into drinking water, but since you're an AOP guy, I'll tell you this. When I got into drinking water right after 1979, and the regulations started hitting, the big things with groundwater contamination and surface water treatment plants and stuff like that, what was really super fun was TCE and PCE. The universal solvents were showing up in drinking water, and they actually had MCLs. And so the quickest and easiest way to treat it was granular activated carbon post-filtration vessels. Some people were stripping it out with air, but then it just became an air contaminant. You couldn't get an air permit, so they were actually doing it with liquid phase GAC. At the time, the granular activated carbon manufacturer in this country had a corner on the market because nobody was doing it, and it was a new business. He was getting $4 a pound for carbon in 1981, 82, when it was really taking off. All the Superfund sites in the country were using it. He was getting $4 a pound. You can buy some of the best grade GAC now in this country with 4 manufacturers that are competitive for under $1 a pound. So something that used to cost $4 in 1982 is less than $1 a pound in 2018. And you throw the inflation curve on that, the price has become very, 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 very competitive. So why they're not changing it, why they're not using it, the fact that they say the cost is amazing. I will tell you that your state regulatory agencies, health and hospitals, I don't know those individuals and I'm not going to say anything disparaging about them, but I've traveled to the Safe Drinking Water Act administrators in all 50 states. In some states, they're in the Department of Environmental Protection and they're engineers. In other states, they're in the Department of Health and they're medical doctors. Medical doctors and engineers don't like each other. They don't even think on the same plane. And so it gets very, very complex. And here in this state, you kind of have a split state in that your wastewater treatment plants are Department of Environmental Protection and your surface water treatment plants are health and hospitals. Okay? And I will submit to you that they don't understand the engineering that it takes to run a drinking water program. So that it's not malicious, it just is. Yes, ma'am?
Hey, you talked about compromised immune system. Do you have a suggestion for people with compromised immune systems with this burn ban? I mean, are they at more risk for that upper respiratory stuff? Should they take baths versus showers or, you know, because they're in the older part of town, most of the older people, I mean, we've got a lot of our older people in the older part of town. So what should they be weary of? Because they've got arthritis,
Yeah.
whatever, lupus or whatever.
While we're in the situation that we're in, I'm hoping it's over before we have to respond, but there should be a different response mechanism. And what I mean by that is if your hydraulic models are accurate, and based on the fact that they have such a robust treatment plan, I'm assuming that the hydraulic model for this distribution system is probably top notch. Okay, I would grant that it's probably a pretty good one. You should be able to identify neighborhoods where water age is going to be the greatest, where the formation of disinfection byproducts is going to be more significant. You should know all your piping materials and understand what biofouling is going to look like and how it's going to occur. You should actually start buying online real-time analyzers. Do you know that there are 8 competitive companies out there that make analyzers that will test THMs in the distribution system, but nobody will bring them to market because they're terrified of having somebody looking over their shoulder all the time? So one of the manufacturers out in San Jose, California, actually went to 10 factories around town, put them in the factories, and you can call it up in Benicia, California, and watch the THM formation around town in real time. Okay, when those devices were first put on market, they were about $50,000 a piece. Now they're about $10,000 a piece, and if everybody actually used them, they probably dropped to about $1,000 a piece, because they're really not that hard to build and they can be used. So if they did all that, it will help the people with the compromised immune systems. But right now, all I can tell you is based on what I know, for the next 30 days, continue to avoid the water. Yes, ma'am.
You said earlier it's a phone call. Who is that phone call to?
The mayor, and the mayor. Yeah, it's, and I think that, listen, I'm really pleased with the turnout tonight, so I'm not going anywhere. Aaron's gonna be really pleased with the turnout tonight. The fact that you're dedicated, we're gonna continue to help. The mayor's gonna get a letter. It's not gonna be mean, it's just gonna be factual. And it's gonna say, these are the things you should consider doing. I drove your distribution system today. I went to the addresses of every one of the long-term running annual average locations. Okay, I'd like the mayor to fix some of those, but if not, I'll have to go to health and hospitals. There are ways we can get this done together. I would like nothing more, the mayor has my cell phone number, to get a call in the morning saying, come sit down with me and the city manager and let's get after this. Okay, and the consultant, I don't want that guy to lose his contract. If that's the way you guys want to go, I want to help him just do a better job. Period. I'm not going to get involved in the local politics. Somebody said something back here about suing, and Aaron and I wear buttons that say Republican, empty box, Democrat, empty box, water with a check mark in it. Okay, we are not partisan. We don't sue. Everything you read on the internet is crap. We're here to help. If 10 people had showed up here tonight and you hadn't expressed interest, I'd have moved on to another town. It's that simple. Because of the turnout, because of your questions, I ain't going anywhere. I'm gonna write the same letter that I wrote to the mayor of Flint, Michigan, to your mayor, telling him what he needs to do. And if he chooses to ignore me, maybe he'll look at a federal indictment in the next 2 years like they are in Michigan. Yes?
Thank you. At what point in the distribution system, how may we find where we are in that system?
God bless you. The only town I've been successful, she says, her question was, how can we find out where we are in the distribution system? A, start asking. and they'll have to tell you, okay? B, just call the water department and say, I live at this address, can you tell me which reservoir I'm on and what the water age I can expect in my community to be? And they should be able to tell you that with a phone call.
They should.
They should.
Well, I'm
You know, I was in this conversation, and this is no joke. I was pulling my hair out in Martin County, Kentucky, and they really didn't have the resources, okay? They had some old atlas sheets. I went to my hotel room that night, and using Google Earth, and God forbid that I'm admitting this in public, but I've already done it one other time, and Zillow. I used Zillow, Google Earth, and some old atlas sheets, and built a hydraulic model overnight, and could go to the meeting the next day and say, oh, you're on the Sycamore Street Reservoir, and based on your distance and pipe size from the treatment plant to your house, by the time it reaches your house, your water is 2.5 days old. And this is what, if they're feeding at this treatment plant at this day, I can run that calculation and say your trihalomethanes are 68. And I'll be damned if you go and run the laboratory and they came in at like 70.
So
I think I was pretty damn on.
I can expect that I and all of us should try to get that information. It should be supplied to us.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. And say it just like that. I live at 123 Main Street. I'd like to know what reservoir feeds my home on average, because it may fluctuate. Back to the tortillas story. You don't know. But on average, they should be able to tell you, you're on the elevated tank here, you're on an 8-inch PVC, C900 main, or a cast iron main, and you are 4.5 days from the treatment plant.
Your reference to, think they might flip the switch since they knew they were coming, makes me think it's easy for them to get onto the healthy use of the expensive treatment, surface water treatment place that we have, but they're not.
They could be doing it right now.
But is that easy of a switch from day 1 to day 2? It can happen?
Yes.
After all the coercion that they were going to receive?
Yes. It's literally that easy. My only thing, and I said this when I started, so I'm going to say it again. All I'm saying is the first gallon of water to leave that treatment plant to the 25th million gallon on a daily basis should be all from the new treatment plant. The 26th million gallon, bring Volkswagen out. That's your backup plant. I'm of the opinion, based on the chemistry I've seen, that they're doing it the other way. So tomorrow morning, switch it. Period. Just switch it. Okay? And that should solve the problem. Or I'm completely wrong, and they're using the more robust treatment plant all wrong.
Because they're out of Baton Rouge.
I don't know where they're at.
Well, I just looked it up. They're out of
They
Baton
are.
Rouge.
Oh.
They are out of Baton Rouge, but they have an office.
So they've
here.
got a technician up here, and maybe the engineer down there, and it's like,
I mean,
hell,
it is.
we've all worked, well, not we all, I know I work with contractors, and if you have a contractor that doesn't live in your neighborhood, then they don't care.
Yeah. This is the last page on that document. It's available on the city's website. Download it. That last page is the 3 treatment trains. The first one in 58, the upgrade, and the 25 million gallon treatment train. It's there. If they're producing water that has the trihalomethane formation potential that it does, and I'll tell you right now, and I told this to Peter Gravatt, like the head of the EPA drinking water program, 3 weeks ago, because I was back for the Legionella thing at the National Academy of Sciences. Okay? And I went in and I told Peter, I said, if I pulled in all the consumer confidence reports in the country, 85 to 90% of them would get no grade. They don't even meet the requirement to get a grade. They get an incomplete. Of the 15% that get a grade, 90% of that 15% are D's and F's. The TOC reduction requirement reporting in the consumer confidence report for Bossier City is just wrong. They're putting in the milligrams per liter where the percentage reduction is supposed to go. I don't even know how to read it. I tried to think that I could figure out what they were trying to say. I've given up. I mean, it's a language I've not seen before. Is it unique or common? No, I see it all over the country. I see people put the TT in the wrong place and the percentages in the wrong place and don't even understand. They get really mad at me when I call TOC dirt, but that's what it is. Yeah, that's not fair, it's not dirt. Yeah, it is. Webster's Dictionary. Yes, ma'am.
If we were to assume they're using the new facility, the total upgrade, we wouldn't be having this burn, would we?
I would hope not.
Right. And what reason could you suspect would be why they don't use this system, the new
Because
system?
they're saving money.
More expensive to run?
I can tell you about 10. Why aren't they running the new treatment plant? I think the contractor's saving money. I'm just going to say it. Okay? I think the contractor's saving money. But I will tell you, I've been in towns where the older operators like, that son of a bitch over there has been working for 45 years and I'm not going to move that new one. The guy driving the Volkswagen for 40 years doesn't like to get in the Maserati. It scares the hell out of him. We don't know. I mean, I don't know whether they kept all the employees. I don't know what happened here.
They didn't.
Yes.
The guys running the Bossier plant used to run the Shreveport plant. They were just hired by Manchester.
What happened to all the city employees? They didn't offer them employment? They laid them off? Oh, that's not cool. Yeah, they shouldn't have laid off your own employees. And I already told you what I think of the Shreveport water. I swear to God, it smelled like somebody just did their business. And that is just, and I don't know whether I got here on a special night last night because of the change of weather or what. Oh my God, I smell a lot of nastiness in drinking water. That stuff. I did not drink it. I couldn't. I literally. What I did. I'm gonna. If anybody tells on me, I had, because I was traveling around. I didn't come from home. I came from another state, and so my clothes had been in the bag for a while. So I took out my shirt and I hung it on the shower rack. And I turned the hot water on and closed the door for about 5 minutes to drop all the wrinkles out of my shirt. And I actually went in to turn the shower off and almost threw up. It was that bad. So I'm just telling you like it is. Yes, sir.
Now, I don't know if you know, and a lot of people don't, but Shreveport actually supplies water to Barksdale. They don't drink Bossier water.
Huh. It's a strange mess. Yes, ma'am.
I appreciate you being here, number one. Number two, I just want to know what to do now. Like, I am sitting here at this meeting, but I'm not getting a whole lot of answers of who I need to go other than the mayor. I'm hearing that they can flip a switch today, and it could be turned on, and all of this can be solved by tomorrow. But frankly, I mean, my skin smells like chlorine. If there's a way that the mayor, all we have to do is write them, and it's a switch that needs to be flipped, I think that needs to happen at 8 a.m. Like, I mean, we can.
Maybe you'll watch the 11 o'clock news.
But who is ultimately responsible for flipping that switch? You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
we're all sitting here, like, this is great information, but.
I'm glad you brought that up because I need to be clearer. I do a lot of these, so sometimes I think I said something because I did at the last meeting, so bear with me. And that's why you guys, it's important that you drag this out of me and ask all the right questions. Go on Facebook and join Bossier City Residents Demand Clean Water, and then we'll know who all of you are. She's going to keep that registered. I mean, and if you don't want us to know who you are, at least go on there and follow it or make up a fake name and put a picture of Mickey Mouse. I don't care. But get the information, okay? And then through that, encourage your friends. Numbers scare politicians. So if everybody in town signs up for that, I will start going on there. I've gone on there a couple times. She has to okay it, but I post. Check out this study on what these health effects are, or this is what's going on. Or I'm going to post that community choice presentation because it's got a lot of stuff in it that I was going to go through, but yeah, I don't need to do because this is different.
Let me ask you a question. Like she was just saying, look, who we need to go to, the mayor and stuff like that. But who can do something about it is the councilors.
The who?
Councilors.
Yes.
City councilors.
A majority. It's both.
Yeah, because the city council is running the mayor.
How many do you have here? 9? It's usually like 8 and a mayor. Mayor's the tiebreaker. Some are 7, some are 5, some are 3, so it depends. So you guys are 9, so it takes 5. 5 guys can make or break this whole deal. But I say that usually in systems that have a $40 million capital outlay. If I were the counselor, the mayor, the police chief, the fire captain, the dog catcher, I'd be freaking embarrassed that I spent $81 million and put it in mothballs. I would be embarrassed. This should be a situation, this is what makes this so perplexing and so unique of all. I've been doing this for 5 years with Aaron. I've been with Aaron for 25, but this water stuff for about 5 years. And this one is the most perplexing I've ever had, because I don't have to come in and get you guys fired up and convinced to spend some money. You know, usually I say, you know, hey, turn off that fluoride, you're overfeeding it anyway, and we don't want fluoride in the drinking water, and people have their opinions on that, but save that money and spend it on cleaning the dirt out of the water. You know, all kinds of different things. Or let's do this together. I don't have to do anything here, you already have it.